And even though it might have been higher than most people on earth had at the time, it was not the ultimate, even if you came from a natural planet, it was not the ultimate level of awareness. So since then, you have grown in awareness, even though you may not consciously realize this. But you have, and that is why we have said, you can go back, re-experience the birth trauma, and now react to it differently, and that is how you can dismiss the primal self. And we have given you the tools to do this. And so when you do this, then what actually starts happening is that now you start gradually questioning all these barriers you have in your four lower bodies that says you cannot be yourself, you cannot express yourself. And so then you can begin to actually consider and tune into, who am I really? What is my spiritual individuality in my I am presence? What does it mean to express that here on earth? And suddenly, my beloved, when you begin to accept and experience that you can actually be yourself on earth, you overcome this desire for escape, this desire to always be somebody else or somewhere else, this desire of thinking. When certain outer conditions change and are the way I think they should be, then I can be myself. My beloved, we have said before that there's a consciousness that makes you think that when you have the ideal outer conditions, then you can be the Christ. But of course, the Christ is not meant to have ideal outer conditions, because the Christ is meant to demonstrate that there is something higher than whatever conditions it experiences. So, there are no ideal conditions for expressing Christhood. If you are sitting there waiting for certain outer conditions before you can express Christhood or be yourself, then you will be waiting for the rest of this lifetime and for however many succeeding lifetimes you need before it clicks and you realize, oh, I'm supposed to start where I'm at and express Christhood at this level, and that's how I get to a higher level, and that is how your outer conditions change. Your outer conditions will begin to change when you decide that you will start where you are and dare to express something of your higher self right here, right now. This is what this messenger decided in 2002. And that is why gradually his outer conditions have changed to where he has now the time and the freedom to focus on doing what he's doing, instead of having to work, go to a job, and so forth and so on. Similar things can happen for many of you. Not necessarily in the same way, but certainly in such a way that outer conditions gradually begin to change to where you are not feeling that they are restricting you from being who you are and expressing what you are here to express. And that is how it can be when you get to the higher levels of your divine plan. But what does it require to get to that level? It requires that you make the shift in consciousness, my beloved, where you recognize that, as I said it 2,000 years ago, I can of my own self do nothing. But with God, all things are possible. This was the expression I used back then, so let me rephrase it based on the teachings we have given you. With my outer self and the power in my outer self, I cannot change my outer conditions. But by reconnecting to the Christ in me, by acknowledging the Christ in me, then it is possible to change my outer conditions. But what does it require to reconnect to the Christ in you, to begin to express your Christhood. It requires, my beloved, a conscious decision that I will not be a slave of my external conditions. I will be the open door. I will express myself regardless of what my outer conditions are. I will do something right now. I will multiply the talents I have been given. I will multiply the situation I am in right now. And then when you take that first small step, the law is absolutely unfailing. There will be a multiplication from the spiritual realm. And as you continue to do this, gradually your outer conditions can begin to shift. Now, there may be some of you who also realize that there are certain outer conditions that you are not meant to change, because you are meant to express that there is a higher way to deal with those conditions. And so it is not just a matter of getting away from certain conditions that are now bothering you, because those conditions might be part of your Christhood. It might be part of your divine plan to actually express Christhood in those conditions so that other people can see that they can be transcendent. And so again, there is a delicate discernment. But of course, it is also so, my beloved, that as you rise higher, as you overcome the compensatory mechanisms, the attachments, as we have also called it, you have more options. You may, for instance, choose at a certain point, no, I don't want to deal with that condition anymore. I've had enough of that experience. Or I don't want to deal with that kind of people anymore. I have demonstrated that there's an alternative to their state of consciousness, and I don't want to keep doing that for the rest of my life. I want to move on to something else. You have, my beloved, many, many options, and it is not so that there is only one way to fulfill your divine plan, and if you don't do it, you will fail. It is not all or nothing. It is not black or white. As long as you are willing to shift your consciousness, my beloved, you cannot fail in executing your divine plan, because the core of it is your shifting consciousness to the highest possible level. And of course, this is not set in stone. Before you come into embodiment, when you make your divine plan, you are making an assessment based on the consciousness you had at your last embodiment. What is most realistic that you can rise to in this lifetime? But if you are willing, if you really apply yourself and apply the teachings we have given, you can rise higher. Many of you can rise higher than the level that is defined in your divine plan. There are some of you who in your divine plan did not define that you could rise to the 144th level in this lifetime. But some of you actually can, if you really apply yourself and go beyond. Because what does it require to shift your consciousness? It just requires a willingness to see something you have not seen before, a willingness to make the decision that you are not bound by this level of consciousness, a willingness to step outside, to use the conscious ability to step outside of its four lower bodies and see, I am not this, I am more than this. And there is no limit put upon you from the ascended realm, nor in your divine plan, of how far you can take that process if you are willing to shift. There is, however, the limit again that you need a certain continuity, so you cannot shift just like that to a level that is too far beyond where you are at. You cannot skip steps. There are spiritual students who become very impatient and they want to be enlightened now in 5 minutes. But it cannot be done. You have to go through all of the 144 levels of consciousness. You cannot skip from the 120th to the 133rd level. It isn't possible. You will lose your sense of identity, your sense of continuity, and it can actually lead to mental illness and schizophrenia. And so what you need to recognize here is that you need to go through the steps, but there is really no limitation to how fast you can do this if you are willing. And so, my beloved, naturally I could go on for a very long time giving you more and more teachings about this. But we have already given you many teachings that you can study and that you can apply with the perspective I have given you on your divine plan and Christhood. Because the real key here is to come to the point where you recognize I am not defined by anything on earth. I am a spiritual being. As the conscious you, I am what we have called pure awareness, to indicate that you are not defined by anything that has form. And that is why you can transcend any form, including the forms in your primal self and your separate self. And so that is the core of Christhood. And you have complete free will as to how you will implement and apply it in this lifetime.